2022 Village Council meeting. And it is 7:00 and we call this meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And lead, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Could we please have a roll call, Courtney?
Hayden.
Here.
George.
Here.
Green. Here. Nivell.
Here.
Silas.
Present.
Randazzo.
Here.
And Bryce.
Here. Thank you. We are looking for an approval of the agenda this evening.
Motion to approve the agenda. Susanna?
Support.
We have a motion on the table by Trustee Green, supported by Trustee Hayden. Do we have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I would like to add grants at the bottom of new business H.
And do we want to specify what that is?
I'm just talking about a couple of grant deadlines.
Okay, so there's more than one, all right. Any other questions or comments? Okay, are you comfortable with that?
Yes.
Request, Larry?
Yes, I support the amended motion.
All right. We have a motion on the table by Trustee Green, supported by Trustee Hayden. Any other questions or comments? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, that motion carries 7-0. Next up, we have the approval of our council minutes, and that is our regularly scheduled meeting from September 26, 2022. Looking for a motion on that.
Make a motion to accept the regular meeting minutes of September 26, 2022, as presented.
A motion on the table by Trustee Nivell, that's supported by Trustee Green. Do we have questions or comments on this? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, that motion carries 7-0. Next up this evening is the acceptance items, which include the finance report from the village treasurer for the month of September, as well as the revenue and expenditure report for the village treasurer for the month of September. That leads us to item number 7, which is the approval of our disbursements, which will be the payables ending October 15th, 2022. We're looking for a motion on that, please.
Motion to approve the disbursements in the amount of $38,866.27 for period 9/16/22 through 10/15/22.
Support.
We have a motion on the table by Trustee Green, and that is supported by Trustee Nivell. Do we have any questions or comments?
I have a question on the disbursement journal for 21648. Courtney McLaren, recording secretary and closed meeting. Both of those were paid separate, so I'm just questioning so that I know, does our clerk then get paid for 2 meetings as well? If there's a regular meeting and a closed meeting, is our clerk getting 2 paychecks? And I guess,
Yeah, because there's 2 sets of minutes.
okay, and I just wanted to make sure. So has that always been the case?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, sure.
Okay, and I just want to make sure that if it's not, that we, make sure we correct that. Because I do believe it's 2 meetings, and it should be paid accordingly, so that's it.
Any other questions or comments? All right, we are ready for a roll call vote, please.
Silas.
Yes.
George.
Yes.
Green.
Yes.
Hayden,
Yes.
Nivell.
Yes.
Randazzo. Bryce.
Yes. Thank you. That motion carries 7-0. Next up this evening is our public comment. Please keep in mind this is the time for agenda items only. You're more than welcome to stand up, come to the podium, raise your hand, whatever you're comfortable doing. Keep in mind it's 3 minutes and it is on agenda items only at this time. We welcome you to discuss non-agenda items further on in the agenda. Do we have anybody this evening? Hearing none, we are ready for item number 9, which is the approval of our consent agenda. This evening's agenda includes the Planning Commission meetings of August 4th, the Township Library meeting of August 23rd, the Township Library meeting of August 23rd. Again, so we're going to change that. That's their regular and their hearing. The Planning Commission meeting from September 6th, the Personnel meeting from September 12th. The Historical meeting of September 13th, the DDA meeting of September 19th, the Personnel Committee meeting of September 28th, the Attorney invoice from October 12th, the Personnel Committee minutes from October 17th, and the first annual Hot Cocoa Halloween Stroll, October 22nd. And it also includes the Harvey Swanson Halloween Parade, which is October 31st. We are looking for a motion at this time.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Support.
We have a motion on the table by Trustee Green, and that is supported by Trustee Nivell. Do we have questions or comments?
I just have one comment. I was a little surprised to see in our packet for acceptance items tonight a event permit for an event dated for 10/22, and it reaches our council 2 days after the event is passed. So that just kind of surprised me a little bit. I would expect we normally would have to review these before the event happens. So that's just a comment.
And it should be.
Go ahead, Pam, sorry. Inlet?
No, I was just agreeing. Oh, yes, we should have done it.
Did you, and I agree, did you call the office? I did, to find out why.
No, I saw it in my packet, and I just thought I'd mention it in the meeting that we should get those sooner, that's all.
Any other questions or comments at this time on the consent agenda? All right, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, that motion carries 7-0. Next up will be the items from the trustees, and Keith, if we can please start with you, and we'll go right now.
Nothing new for me, but a question, I guess, for Ryan. I know it's been a little while since we talked, but whatever happened to the striping on the streets?
Yeah, DPW spent a lot of time in parking lots, and doing the, parking spots along the streets, especially down Mill Street. Have not done striping going up the hill. There's some other striping that, it's a little more than we can do in-house. It's one that we kind of got to either schedule way in advance or hurry up and do it ourselves a lot of times. So it will happen, but it hasn't happened yet.
So we haven't scheduled it.
Nope.
Is there a reason why we haven't?
Oakland County does it. Most years they'll call and say, hey, we can stripe for you this one day. Are you ready for us?
Right.
And usually it's like, whoa, that's like next week and we can't. And other times it's a long process to find somebody to come and do it because it's a pretty small striping project in the grand scope. So that's why it hasn't happened yet. And I know Bob and I have both been admiring the new asphalt quite a bit. So we didn't want to mess it up with new paint too.
So the plan is trying to get Oakland County to do it, so we're just waiting to get on their schedule?
Is a lot of it, and they'll stripe when they're in the area and stuff like that. It's a whole, to get them to come out, and we can contract it out and find somebody to do it, but it's a bit of a pain. So we haven't done that yet.
So sometime next summer is what you're saying?
At the latest, yeah.
It probably won't be the winter, right?
Probably not. Yeah. They're still going though. There's lots of projects in the area, as we know.
Right.
So they are still striping right now.
All right, thanks.
Could,
Yeah.
on Dixie, with the new construction, they use tape? Is that something that could be used?
Usually tapes for
It's
temporary.
temporary usually, yeah.
I don't know how long it's gonna take, but it's been there all construction season.
Okay, that's all I have, thanks.
Next up is Pat, please.
Yeah, just one brief thing. Historical Society did have elections. Judy Miracle will retain her presidency. That's about all I got. Oh, and of course, they're very, very excited and pleased and full of gratitude for the museum being painted by Bob and the crew and Scott and his crew. So, yeah, that was very, 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 very popular topic at the last meeting. And they are aware that if they gotta wait till next spring for a schoolhouse, at least they'll be standing. So that's fine. That's it. Thanks.
They were able to complete the whole mill, Pete?
Done.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. Did a good job. Great job.
Kate, please.
As you see, we've met quite a few times on the personnel committee, and the notes are in the packet. And the other thing was I attended the volunteer appreciation night, and for whatever reason, I mean, there were people there, but I think they expected more people that had said they were going to come, and it's too bad they didn't, because it was a very nice event. Thank you.
For the DDA Appreciation Night.
That's all.
All right, Larry, please.
IT committee has not met. We're still, I think, pending information from IT Right on a few quotes. And the other interesting thing that Ryan and I both did is we attended the SEMCOG Regional General Assembly, and that was really interesting, getting the legislative updates on what's going on and projections about the legislation in the state and projections about the growth and population and stuff like that. There was some interesting talk about some potential grants that could be available through there, so we both took notes on that. Also, in terms of our projects and surrounding communities, we got our capital improvement plan. We have a lot of things that, being the downtown for a lot of the surrounding community, I did make some contact in one of the sessions with another official who has done a lot of work in his community and got his contact information, and I'm going to have him and Ryan link up together and hopefully give us ideas for how we can collaborate more effectively between us and the surrounding township areas for these projects that really improve our downtown for all of the people around in the area. So a lot of good information in that meeting, and I recommend everybody check out, if you're not signed up to get the SEMCOG updates, sign up and get those, because they're very interesting, full of really good information. And it was a really interesting session there.
Tony, please. Or, I'm sorry, Melanie.
Okay. All right, grants we'll talk about. CDBG funding, is that going to be starting in November, I believe? I think, Ryan? Jenna's not here to ask.
Which committee, which item is this?
CDBG for us that we get through the county every year. That generally starts in November and December. We get the info and have to have everything in.
So what is this is committee updates right now. That would be a Jenna question.
Okay.
Jenna's not here, unfortunately.
Okay, well, usually people say things that are not committee, kind of like the volunteer thing and SEMCOG thing, but okay. So I will wait then and not say anything. Well, you know what? I'm not going to. The transportation millage, I went to a Board of Commissioners meeting on that for the millage rate, one of the proposals. And I would recommend that everybody really educate themselves on this, and please let your constituents know what that means to our community. We will not be seeing anything from that, although a big chunk of money will be taken from our area and with little benefit. So please educate yourselves on that. If we can take down the plexiglass in the office, maybe look at doing that, that would be great. Halloween, I'll be volunteering down at the bonfire, 5:30. Is that when we're doing it? All right. And then the grants I'll talk about when that comes up. Thank you.
So you said 5:30, the cider and donuts is actually at 7:30.
7:30.
No, we're meeting there because we have to
But I'm
set
just
up.
clarifying, you said you'll be down there for it. 7:30 is when, at the end of Halloween.
Right, trick or treating,
When we-
6:30 to
when
7:30.
we're open to.
The flyers in your packet.
Right, okay, just verifying for the public. Anything else?
No.
Anything
Thank
heritage
you.
wayfinding,
No.
Any
planning
updates?
commission?
No. No. That I remember. I wasn't at the last planning commission meeting, but
You all set?
oh, I am. I'm so sorry. Yes. Okay.
All right,
Sorry.
please.
Well, Parks and Rec, just have didn't have any meetings, but, November 25th and December 2nd, we're gonna be doing the movies. December 3rd is Christmas in the Village. I completed the beautification awards, and the houses, the Butsu family, the Maddox family, and the Hayden family. The Butsus live Mill and James, and the Maddox family lives one house north,
33.
33, thank you. 33 Church Street, and then Larry, I'm pretty sure everybody knows where he lives. But I think Larry's the only one that's here, so I'd like to give him his award, and I'll pass out the other two.
Is that for October we're talking about?
Yes, yes.
Will those be in the paper, Tony, or how are you doing it?
Yeah, I'll get with Ryan to figure out how we're gonna do that, so it's gonna cost money. So. Thanks.
I have to give a lot of credit to my wife and our guest from England who really did a lot of the work around the house in October.
It looks great.
And if you look real close, you will see the sign that I gave him. Fences.
It's wrapped in it.
It's in there.
And that's pretty much it.
Trustee Randazzo, what was the November date for the museums?
November 25th.
Yeah, Thanksgiving weekend.
That's gonna be Black Friday. I believe it is. It should be.
Yep.
That's the Friday of Thanksgiving?
Yeah, it's gonna be the Black Friday. And then December 2nd is a Saturday before. I'm sorry.
Friday.
It's a Friday before
Christmas Day.
Christmas in the Village.
Got it. Just want to make sure I got them right in the minutes.
Thank you, Tony. Ryan, anything you'd like to share at this point? RC, anything?
No, RRC, we're waiting on our zoning ordinance to be official. Talked about several of them at the last planning commission meeting. And then there's some DDA info in your packet, but I'll defer to either of you on that.
All right. That's to me with DDA. Thank you, everybody, for Witches Night, who volunteered, who came out. We absolutely love, as usual, seeing everybody from everywhere. The vendors reported large amounts of people, pleasant people, good weather, good sales, things like that, so we appreciate it.
My town was pretty packed.
This was the largest so far, and believe it or not, it was, what, 70-something, 80 last year. It's no rhyme or reason, but it was absolutely wonderful. And again, thank you to everybody coming out, sharing, spreading the word, volunteering. We absolutely appreciate it. DDA continues to work on their 22-23 projects, kind of gearing up for the second half of the year, towards the end of the year. As Kay mentioned, there was an appreciation evening for volunteers. So we thank everybody who came, everybody who participated in that as well, the volunteers who worked on the volunteer event. We also are looking to the end of the farmers market wrap up from the season, gathering information together, looking for the new year, what it will look like. So stay tuned for that. And if you have any interest in sharing your feedback, that would be wonderful. We'd appreciate that. And that leaves us at the DDA accepted, well, not accepted because they already knew it, but I shouldn't say that, revisited the wayfinding proposal, and now that it's been accepted, got a chance to preview that. We shared the information at the meeting. Heritage Garden project, Paul was able to update us on that. Receiving a grant, so I know they'll be meeting to figure out the next steps on the lighting and things like that, so we're looking forward to hear more
What
about
grant
that.
are they looking at?
The grant that was received for the lighting in the landscape.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
sure when you guys.
I thought you said seeking a grant.
No,
Okay.
from receiving the grant, we were asking, like, obviously, okay, what
Yeah.
are the next steps, and Paul said you guys will be meeting, so, that's all I have on my list. Anything else? I think that's it for now. So, that's the DDA wrap up. Anybody forget anything I'm good with? Committees. All right. Next up is the presentation from the audit report. I will start with Manager Betts.
Yeah, we will turn it over to Tyler Baker from Manor Costarian. As in, man, it's a mouthful.
I can't say it either.
Yeah, our auditors. Tyler's been extremely helpful throughout the whole process, very communicative. He's worked pretty closely with Beth on all the information, and you've got a copy of his presentation that was just given to you, the hard copy, as well as the final report, and I will unlock that for you so we can look at those.
Mayor Costeras, you were close.
I almost had it.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Tyler Baker, like Brian said, I'm a manager at Mayor. First off, I want to thank Ryan and Beth for all of their work throughout the process. They were ready for us. They were responsive, which is always helpful during the process. So I want to formally thank them for all of their assistance throughout this process. What we'll be going through today mainly is the PowerPoint presentation here that you should have found. The information here are kind of the key highlights from the actual balance audit report that we want to focus on. It was a little easier to kind of flip through and kind of key areas, and then we'll go over some of the letters as well. At any point, you guys have any questions, feel free to yell at me. We can kind of go through those as we kind of work through this report. So this is for the village's audit as of 6/30/22. Sorry, remember to flip through this week's now. Take my own notes here too. So if you guys look through to the first page, audit results. So this is audit results of the financial statement audit. And we have an unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of assurance that we as auditors can provide, which is consistent with previous years, but is always good news from the board standpoint to hear that as well. And basically what that means is that based on our procedures, we believe that the financial statements are particularly correct in accordance with GAAP, which is generally accepted filing standards. New for fiscal year 22, a couple things here. One is the receipt of the ARP funding, which was considered federal. The village received $151,000 or so. And we'll see this a little further back in detail also, but expended $42,000 thus far as of 6/30 of '22. And then the remaining approximately $110,000 you'll show as unearned on the balance sheet, and we'll look at that as well. Also new for this year is what's called GASB 87, which revolves around leases of physical items. Based on evaluation with management, that is not a material impact to the village's financials this year. But what is next is GASB 96, which is similar except for subscription-based IT arrangements. What we've seen in have conversations with many different sizes of municipalities, that's going to be a much bigger deal. We're talking subscriptions of Office, we're talking softwares, things like that. So the materiality potentially may not still be affected, but it's the quantity-wise, there's just a lot more to evaluate and for management and the different departments to kind of collect. So right now, the step would be just as we go through the fiscal year, just accumulate those agreements, start looking at them, determining how long they are, that type of thing, and then us along with management will go through those and determine if they apply ultimately to this new GASB or not. That'll be next year. But always good to be aware of those things coming down the pipeline. The next page is what we have the government-wide net position. So if you remember, we have two different kinds of financial statements. Modified accrual, which is the general fund and major involved streets, and then we have the government-wide, which includes fixed assets and any debt that are long-term in nature. What this also shows is the only place that it shows comparative is within the MD&A. So there's a couple things I want to point out here. You'll notice capital assets increased net approximately $578,000 from 1.8 million to just under 2.4, mainly due to Crossland Park Drain and then Mill Street painting. Those two were 510,000 or so, and then 210,000. Also, current and other assets decreased approximately 402,000, obviously mainly due to the outflows of resources to pay for those projects. I mentioned the unearned revenue, or basically revenue that you don't have expenditures for, and so that can't be shown as revenue yet when it's restricted grants with the ARP funding. That is under the current liabilities there in the middle of the schedule, where it increased from 32,000 to 144,000. The next page is the balance sheet, specifically for the three funds, the general fund, the major street, and then the local street. A couple things here that I want to point out is just specifically that unearned revenue on the middle of the page, left column of the general fund of that 110,000. As expenditures for the project with Oakland County are incurred, that revenue then will be recognized. So throughout the next few years, as that project goes, or whatever that timeline ultimately ends up looking like, then that 110,000 will be recognized along the next timeline. Towards the bottom of that schedule, you'll see the total fund balances, with the general fund ending the year at a fund balance of 194,000, major street at 29,000, and then local street at 31,000. On the general fund side, one thing that I want to point out, and we'll discuss further back, is the unassigned number. And so you'll notice that's a negative 37,000 of fund balance. So what that is basically above that, there's that assigned for subsequent year expenditures of 215,000. What that is the 22-23 approved budget shown expenditures over revenue of that 215,000, and so it's required to allocate that out from fund balance, which ultimately says that the budget was approved for more than what was in fund balance at the end of the year. And so we'll show a note in a comment in that management letter as well. But something to be aware of. And then the next page is the income statement. In regards to the governmental funds, so on modified accrual, no long-term items in nature. bottom of that schedule, you see the three similar funds, the general fund, major, and local street, with general fund decreasing $312,000, major street decreasing $221,000, and major street increasing by approximately $20,000. As a percentage of total revenue, the general fund is at approximately 35% funded, major street is at 21% of total revenue, and then local street is at 68%. The next page is a 5-year trend that shows the trend in which revenues, expenses, and fund balance over the last 5 years, specifically for the general fund. A couple things to point out: that the first column of each year is the revenue and other financing sources. Obviously, the last 4 years, you see that slight uptick, which is what you like to see, consistency. And then into 22 is still consistent. And then the kind of the outlier in this graph are the expenditures, which we kind of talked about. Those couple projects caused that large influx in expenses, causing the fund balance to then decrease from 21 to 22. But I think does show a good representation of the previous 5 years and kind of what that looks like from a revenue-specific standpoint. Following graph is specifically to the unassigned number, or basically the money that has not been spoken for or committed yet. Obviously, same idea that we kind of talked about. The reason that 2022 is negative is due to that unassignment of future expenditures, which is in contrast to the previous 4 years of that consistent growth. So next slide is a pie graph in regards to the general fund revenues. So this is total revenues and the percentage that these types make up. A couple things is just to note that the big purple, we'll call it, or blue on the top section is taxes. And so that makes up a substantial amount of your guys' operating revenue at 56%, consistent with last year, which was 58%. That bottom right is intergovernmental revenue, so that's state share and any other federal or state grants you received at 38%. And then other revenues would be that following 6% in the yellow. Next page would be the federal fund expenditures, and the same idea. Main thing here is that general government makes up the majority at 54%, with public works in the bottom right corner with the yellow at 28%. All of which were fairly consistent with prior years. Next page is the budget to actual, specifically for the general fund. So a couple things to note here is the original far left column, final budget, second column, and the actual on the far right is the variances with the final budget. You'll notice the revenues were under what the final budget was of approximately $189,000, with expenditures also being under of $160,000 for a net change in fund balance from final budget anticipated to actual of $21,000, which is approximately 3.4% of total expenditures. That's mainly due to the full amount of grants anticipated to be received and expended being budgeted for, but without those expenses, you can't recognize the revenue causing that difference, with the net number being the $21,000. Again, we kind of already touched on it. We have future considerations, GASB 96, just so the board is aware of that coming down the pipe. And then we should have a couple letters with you.
Quick question before you move on.
Yeah.
The date on that is effective June 30th. Obviously, our year end is June 30th. Does that mean that this year it is effective, or 2024's year?
June 30th of 2023. So this next year's audit will have that effective.
It will, okay, all right.
So 2 letters. We'll start with this one that shows significant auditing matters underlined. This is the governance letter. This is required communication to the board. This talks about any estimates that we have in regards to any of the numbers being depreciation expense, compensated absences, any difficulties we may have had during the audit, any disagreements, if there were any findings, or any other items required to be communicated to the board, they would be in this letter. This is a boilerplate letter. We did not have any disagreements with management, no findings noted, which is what the board likes to see, is that boilerplate communication. We discussed some of these already, but your other letter you should have is the management letter, which is our recommendations to the board. Well, the first one we have is the segregation of duties, which is consistent with previous years. That has been discussing the different individuals that have access to certain items, just making the board aware of that. Through our process, we did not note anything in regards to internal control, but this isn't necessarily an internal control audit. We're not required to audit controls, but we are required to gain an understanding, and if there anything that comes up, we're required to communicate that to the board, and basically that is this. But this is no different than it has previously been in previous years also. The next one on page 2 is what I kind of mentioned also, but we wanted to formally make aware of the board, is the budgeted fund balance deficits. In regards to Public Act 2, which is the third paragraph down on page 2, it discusses that basically total estimates of expenditures in the budget shall not exceed total estimate revenues, basically saying that it's best practice and in accordance with Public Act 2 to not approve budgets that put funds in deficits. Some of that has to do with deferred revenue also, and different grants anticipated, but that is something that we wanted to make everybody aware of also. Those are the comments we had. That is all of the information that I have today. And like I said, all of this information that we talked about today is in the physical down report, just a much easier to consume for all parties going through that PowerPoint. So hopefully that's helpful. Any questions about anything? Sure.
So our fund balance, I think, is brief a bunch of numbers.
Yep.
Not got the numbers there.
Yep.
Was about 40% of our expenditures a year. Where should our fund balance be to be financially healthy village? Well, there's certainly like a rule of thumb.
There
right?
is.
So there's different organizations that put out what the recommendation is, but a lot of it is how the board and management determine to allocate those funds. So if you were to say we want a 25% fund balance as the goal, but you knew the projects for these drainage and the paving was coming up, and you kept it 25%, then you wouldn't necessarily have the funds unless you fiscally were responsible for those funds and set those aside. So it kind of all depends on how you allocate out and how you categorize your fund balance. Dictates what percentage you would like it to be. So you're obviously driven a lot by taxes, and so because fluctuations in property taxes could benefit or not benefit the district, it's always good to have some sort of reserve, because if you don't have that inflow, you're not planning accordingly for those capital outlays moving forward, that's tough to make up in the future. I can provide you, if you want specifics into different organizations, associations that say, on what Michigan Township Association or MGFOA says, we can give those, and we can send an example for it.
40 is good. It's just like I always.
It's not too high, it's not too low.
Right.
It depends on what your future needs are.
Yeah.
Also.
But-
I would not say it's by any means too low, but you can also see where you have a large influx in a project that's needed, how that can quickly eat away at that fund balance. So overall, I think it's helpful. That's what you're looking for from me. But it also completely depends on what the future needs are. So. In all that, it's all that too. You could look at surrounding areas. Every area is different. So who knows?
Yeah.
State agencies or even federal agencies come up with the percentages, that's statewide, or you can get countywide, which is a little bit better, but still even within, obviously, Oakland County, you're talking about a lot of different,
Bigger
rates.
budgets, bigger budgets. And I doubt if you can even talk on this, but just in case you can, I don't know, but if that millage proposal goes through, it's 0.95, how will that affect us?
I think management can probably provide a better
Okay.
estimate on that, and not right now, because I get that takes some calculation.
Yeah, okay, and I didn't know if you could, okay, very good. I
Good answer.
understand.
Well, we could.
No,
It'll be an estimate.
Pending no other questions, we would need a motion and action to accept the report for the 2021-2022 audit.
I make a motion to accept the report for the 2021-2022 audit as presented.
Support?
We have a motion on the table by trustee Hayden, and that is supported by trustee Nyvo. Do we have any other questions or comments?
I want to thank you guys for all your
Can we
work
please
in
have a roll
this.
call vote, Courtney?
Appreciate the opportunity, sir.
With the 2021 audit.
2021, 2022.
George,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
Hayden,
Yes.
Nivell,
Yes?
Randazzo,
Yes.
Silas, Bryce.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you very much for your time.
Get home to that baby.
Thank you, Tyler.
Appreciate everything that Beth
Thank you,
and
Beth.
Ryan and I can work towards as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for the
Nice
receipts.
job, guys, thank you. You got a new
All
one?
right, we have no unfinished business this evening, which leads us to our new business. The first item is the approval of the DPW laborer, and I'll start that out with Manager Manis.
All right, lots of you have met Jeff Jackson already. We needed to hire a new DPW laborer. He began working a couple weeks ago. We were hard pressed and needed to move quickly. He will be hired in the normal way, pending council approval, with a 90-day review to take place. It would be right around the first of the year. I recommend that council make a motion to hire Jeffrey Jackson for the position of DPW laborer at the rate of $20 per hour and 40 hours per week to begin October 3rd, 2022.
Make a motion that we move to hire Jeffrey Jackson for the position of DPW laborer at the rate of $20 per hour and 40 hours per week, begin October 3rd, 2022.
Support?
We have a motion on the table by trustee Green, and that is supported by trustee Nyvel. Do we have questions or comments? All right, I would like a roll call there too as well, please.
I guess I have a question. And I apologize, I don't keep my notes real organized. The laborers that we do have besides Jeff, they are would be less than Jeff?
We have a supervisor and then one other laborer who he's currently paid a little bit more.
And the supervisor being Bob?
Bob, yep.
Yeah. We have Bob and then,
Matt Vanover, we hired him in March of this year, and then
no, Jeff.
Jeff.
So two
Yep.
laborers and Bob.
Yep.
It just, I mean, I hate to, obviously if he's good with $20 an hour, $20 an hour is what it is, but, I mean, when you can get $15 to $17 an hour at McDonald's, it's, you know, if a guy can do, things that we need him to do and be, self-motivating and all those kinds of things, I just, again, I don't know what our pay structure is specifically for these positions, but, you know, to get up to around $25 an hour to try to keep someone, my 2 cents.
It's an ongoing conversation, definitely.
And I think that echoes for all of our staff, because you do that, and then you have other staff members that are already paid less than that, that should be getting paid more as well.
But they do a good job.
Correct.
So
They do it.
their job isn't based on his job.
No, but what I'm saying is, if you're valuing them for what they do and the amount that they averagely make in that position based on other municipalities, we are average. So if we're going to raise that, are we going to look at that as for the
No,
other
we've
ones
already
as
looked at the
well?
other positions, we've already raised the other positions.
We haven't, but yes.
Yeah, we talked about it.
We've looked at that, but yes.
Yeah, they've all gotten raises.
Okay, I'm saying for the position, not raises based on their productivity. I'm saying when we look at what you make in a similar municipality, is it average? Is it above average or below average? We know those answers, we are not meeting those at this point.
Yeah, we're not talking about that. I mean, I said about that compared to another municipality. I said compared to McDonald's.
And I'm simply stating, I agree with you, and we don't pay them.
But you said we
for
can't
the
give him a
value.
raise because everybody else has to get a raise.
I didn't say that, I said we need to look at that for everybody else as well, not just them. I'm echoing you and taking it. I wasn't disagreeing with you at all.
I can share with,
We're taking another step because we already gave those people raises. The offices already all had raises. And we're having trouble keeping laborers. Labor is the issue. Is it not?
Keith, I can share with you that we have discussed this topic in personnel committee meetings, and I know our personnel director, the village manager, has also been looking into this very question and topic about the wage rates and are we competitive or not, and I think that's why you're seeing this person being hired in at a higher rate than the previous person, because of a recognition of those concerns.
Yeah, certain positions are just high turnover positions. They just are what they are. But, again, if Bob gets sick or goes on vacation or gets hit by a truck.
Yeah, obviously, we're not at the end of this topic, but it takes time to really evaluate that, and we also have to have a proper process when we decide to make any changes to those pay scales and stuff, so it is equitable and fair, and you don't have unfair or situations or things like that within the staff. So, you know, it's a very tricky topic, and I know our village manager is going to do the best he can as personnel director to come up with some good recommendations for that.
Any other questions or comments before we vote? All right, hearing none, Courtney, please.
Green,
Yes.
Hayden,
Yes.
Nivell,
Yes.
Randazzo,
Yes.
Dialis, George,
Yes.
Rice.
Yes. Thank you, that motion carries 7-0. Next up is the proposed 2023 schedule of the regular village council meetings.
All right, your packet contains the proposed 2023 meeting schedule. This item can be voted on at this time, or we can discuss and maybe put a time limit on that discussion to work to create the final schedule. The goal is that we are able to communicate the meeting schedule further in advance than, you know, waiting until the December meeting and saying, oh yeah, we need to do that before our next meeting. Additionally, the Planning Commission and DDA will be working on their 2023 schedules in the near future. They both determine when they meet. So they'll be finalized. We'll be working to finalize those a little sooner than December as well. But they'll be shared to the council and posted on their website and all the normal places as well. We had a couple joint meetings this past year, which was very helpful for each group that we got together and talked about all kinds of good stuff. We will need to schedule those as well. They're not on the proposed schedule at this time. We'll need to meet to talk about when we want to do those, whether we want them in the middle of summer or not, and things like that. But I recommend the council review the proposed 2023 village council meeting schedule and consider one of a couple different next steps. You could approve it as presented. You could approve with a few recommendations, or you could just delay and discuss at the next council meeting as you prefer. So I leave it in your capable hands.
These are all the fourth Monday, correct?
Correct.
I make a motion that we approve the 2023 schedule of the regular village council meetings as presented.
Support.
I should clarify, Kay, that at least one isn't, because December 18th is, you run into Christmas, so we're always earlier that
Okay,
month.
then that's-
I think the rest are, off the top of my head.
I have a
We
question.
have a motion on the
Wait,
table by
yeah,
trustee
wait till we
Green,
get to the,
and that is supported by trustee George. Good question.
And that's why I was going to ask a question for discussion. Has the planning commission reviewed the dates proposed for planning commission?
no.
He
We
just
were
said
I was just approving village
Right.
council, period, not
Yep.
anybody else's.
DJ will approve
Oh.
theirs, planning will approve theirs.
Anybody else's?
Because the schedule as shown in the packet shows all 3 meetings.
It's-
It
right.
does, but council only gets to decide councils.
I'd like to make a comment as well. I noticed that for council and DDA, there are some meetings that are, and I'm sure it's because of scheduling, are the same Mondays. So that's a 7:30 a.m. until a 9 p.m. day for village manager, clerk. That's a long day.
President
Pardon me?
and president is on DDA.
Yeah,
as
that's
well.
right. So, yeah, and even if they want to come hang, right? It's a long day. So if there's a way that, and I don't know how, and that's a DDA thing to discuss, but if somehow we can work that out where they're not on the same Mondays, maybe the Monday before or after, and then also just a comment, and it's up to planning commission. I know someone mentioned that perhaps if planning was on Mondays, so that all of our meetings were on Mondays, council, DDA, and then planning, it might make it easier, more consistent. I'm just throwing it out there. Have no idea what planning would like to do, but there you have it.
Just,
Any other questions or comments?
I have a comment. The only problem would be, that if they were all on Mondays, then when we need to have special meetings, or we need to have public hearings, or things like that, then we're really jockeying around trying to find a Monday
To,
Nothing.
to do it on.
no, just do it on a Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday.
Then what's the point, I guess?
Well,
What do you mean?
planning was one evening and council was one evening, that would leave you 2 evenings, but that's up to planning to decide. But yeah, it would be fine to, it would leave you
I
still 2
still
evenings
don't
a month.
understand.
But I know our, motion on the table is the council dates. So, questions or comments on our motion? Anything else? All right. We have a motion on the table by trustee Green, supported by trustee George. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries 7-0. Next up, we have the proposed 2023 holiday and village village office closure schedule.
Yep, your packet has the proposed 2023 holiday schedule. And again, can vote on this, can discuss, can wait. It's in line with neighboring communities, Oakland County, the state of Michigan holidays. The village remains open on election days, and regular office hours will only be impacted by some of these holidays. Some impact the DPW more than they do the office staff. The personnel policy will be updated to reflect these holidays that are observed by the village as part of its updates that are already underway. Some have changed in the last while since we've been working on the personnel policy. I recommend council review and consider each of the same next steps as the last item. So can approve as presented, can approve with changes, can hold off and talk about it next time.
Are you talking about federal holidays?
Yeah, Juneteenth is one that is not listed in our
Oh, she took it
personnel
off this
policy.
year. I thought everybody, oh, you didn't take it off.
Oh, observed it, yeah.
Yeah.
It was added to our list of
Right.
observed
So,
holidays, yes.
I guess I'm wondering why we need to do this, if we already have the federal holidays listed.
So there's some flexibility in there. You'll see, not every municipality observes every holiday. Some observe more, some have less. Some trade a half day on Christmas Eve and a half day on New Year's Eve, so it's only one holiday observed. There's some variety to it.
Do they all do a flex time and have Fridays off and all of that too?
Some do, some don't. There's no like rule of thumb on holidays, so that's why in the interest of just letting people know when they are, as soon as possible, we discuss it tonight.
Guess I'm still not seeing it. That's just it.
Well, one thing is, some of the days are, if it's a Sunday and it's off a Monday, et cetera,
Right.
they need to block off the days that people can rent the rooms, they need to, obviously schedule their schedules, but it's more than that, as people are making their plans. So, a lot of the times by September, you already have groups wanting to know their January on dates that they
Right.
can,
if
and
you
what the availability
Just
is.
observe the federal holidays, they would know ahead what those are. I mean, there's 14 days now that you got, plus every
Generally,
Friday you guys are on.
Yes.
So I just think you could work around whatever that is.
To some extent, yes, but there is some,
So you're saying making it a floating holiday? Like New Year's
No,
Eve would
I-
only be on a Friday that you're opened, or that you're closed?
No, no, no. I'm in agreement with if it's on Sunday, you take the Monday, if it's on Friday, you take
Saturday.
on Saturday, you take the Friday, thank you. No, I'm not, I'm saying leave it as it is right now, I just don't see a problem with it. I don't ever know of an issue that came up because of it, about renting rooms or anything else.
Well, I have a question about the Indigenous Peoples' Day, because I've looked a little research on that, and it seems some states call that day Columbus Day, other states do Indigenous Peoples' Day. It seems the state of Michigan as a whole does not take that as a holiday. So I'm wondering why we want to include that in our calendar if the state is not taking that.
I'm not sure about the state, but I know the federal government does. I also just want to point out before we get too far, we don't have a motion on the table on this item. We are discussing,
Okay.
but,
Good question, good point.
Yeah.
All right, so,
yeah, that's a federal one that not every municipality observes. I know, I wish it was black and white, but there's, and some, the Friday after Thanksgiving is one that's up for grabs. Juneteenth, as well as the 4th of July, like the 4th of July falls on a Tuesday. So we're open on Monday.
Right.
Just there's wiggle room in there. That's why it's not as easy to discuss as one would hope.
Well, then I'll make a motion that we leave the holidays as are,
As presented.
no, as are currently in effect.
How many holidays do
You
we,
mean the 2021 schedule, or 2022 schedule?
Right.
15 listed.
15.
Right.
There's 14
So-
federal holidays,
Right.
but there's 15 listed on the list in front of you.
right,
Yes.
which is,
Indigenous Peoples' Day is not a
It's
federal.
because of indigenous peoples.
right, that's
No.
federal.
Is it Juneteenth?
And
No,
Juneteenth was just
Juneteenth was
added.
added last year.
We have Good Friday on ours, which is one in the personnel policy that is not federal.
Yes.
have we previously given this
Friday
Indigenous
after
Peoples'
Thanksgiving
Day?
Day is
No,
one
it's
that's
new.
not federal.
That's new, okay.
Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, it depends, because I get mail on those days.
2021, it became formally commemorated by the president with a proclamation.
which,
Indigenous Peoples' Day.
Okay.
It is,
Yes.
I thought it was federal, I know it is county, and I believe it is state, I thought it was federal. But, it is,
It is, yeah,
Right.
it's,
Closed on that day.
correct. Our local, I know we don't go by bank holidays, our local banks were closed on there, some other municipalities were closed on that day. It is
It is a
progress,
federal.
changing from, as you've mentioned, Columbus Day to respecting Indigenous Peoples' Day. We had been closed on Columbus Day, sometimes, not sometimes, it's been irregular, and
Brian, I just got a question, I'm just curious on this because, that's the first time I looked at them. Because we're closed on Fridays already,
The office is closed.
huh?
The office is closed.
But is that,
Closed.
Yeah, you wouldn't get
do
paid.
you do that on Monday? I mean, do you take Monday off, or is Friday, it's Friday, it just, that's what it is?
Yeah. So I'm salary, so it doesn't matter. The DPW, it does matter because they regularly work Fridays. In the personnel committee, we've talked about this one a little bit because people have different regular, times. For the clerk and treasurer who don't regularly work Fridays, it's an additional day that they're paid for.
Okay.
It's a
so-
holiday day.
It would also
And-
matter for the DDA director.
yeah, for Mary.
Yep.
As far as, the Good Friday, I know some people observe it, some people don't. how does that play with DPW? Is that a day off for them?
Generally, it has been, yes.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's all religious kind of thing, but
As we all know, if there's a snowstorm that day.
Right?
I said, as we all know, if there's a snowstorm that day.
Yeah,
Yep.
Did you make a motion?
I did make a motion.
Did we get support for that as we continue to discuss?
We just
Okay.
continue to get off base. Do we have a
I'll
support for
support
the
it.
motion?
I'll support it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Tony, was that your last question, or did you have more?
no, that was
Okay, so
Anyway.
I have a question. Based on Kay's motion, which, can you read the motion back real quick, please?
It's to leave the holiday schedule as is.
And I'm just looking at this proposed holiday schedule. Are there any of these holidays on this proposed holiday schedule that are not in the as-is holiday schedule?
Yes.
So for 2022, Indigenous Peoples' Day was not listed. It's one that people said, the township's closed, the post office is closed, why are you open? So that's what started this conversation. The rest were observed in 2022, including Juneteenth for the first time.
And Indigenous Peoples' Day was not approved until after we created our schedule for 2022, that's why. We didn't consider updating it.
Got it.
Because my only concern is if we keep increasing the number of paid holidays year over year as whatever administration in the federal level decides to add additional holidays at the federal level, then we're going to have more and more pay going out. It does create, it's just something to consider. We've had 14 days of holiday for I don't know how many years before, and now we're suddenly adding on one every year, and that's not something I'm necessarily happy about doing.
The personnel committee, if it was the council's interest, could consider floating those holidays, like mentioned, so that office staff, the DDA director, or cleaning staff, take the Monday instead, and then they're still not paid for the Friday holidays. That'd be one way to mitigate some of the cost.
Yeah.
That'd be up to the personnel committee fitting that into the policy.
Yeah, I like that concept, so I would like to see the personnel committee follow up in that direction and take a look at which of these days could be converted to, a certain number of floaters where the people can decide which day means something to them and they want to take that as their floater holiday.
And then we have people off here and there and everywhere, we don't even know when they're in the office. I don't like that schedule at all, but,
Well, you will know
from a
because
management viewpoint,
they have to put in for that, to take their floating holiday on whatever particular holiday.
As you very well know, Larry, we have issues many times at the office not being covered already, without any of this involved. I just think if it's a federal holiday, then they should get the holiday off, not move it around, but,
I have a big concern having people creating fluff out of a respectful holiday. It's convenient for me on a Friday or a Monday. A holiday was created to acknowledge those people or event for that holiday. It's not created for our inconvenience, or decision as to why they're off. We don't know what people celebrate. We don't know what they do that day. It's none of our business. It's our job to ensure that they have the time and place to do that. And I don't think federal holidays are created out of fluff. I think they're created out of respect.
Oh, they're created out of fluff. Most companies.
They are
They
created
are
out of
11
respect.
holidays. 11 holidays.
Our company, I think because of this is my experience with my work, I think because of this sudden addition of new federal holidays that haven't been celebrated before, I think they said, okay, we're gonna just give you a floater holiday to take it. You can pick which one you want to take it on. So I think that companies are recognizing that they just can't keep on increasing the number of days off they give people as holidays. They have to, at some point, put a limit on that. And the option to that is make it flexible, so whatever holiday means, for a lot of people, if you're not Christian, for example, Good Friday is not a holiday that would commemorate you. Even Christmas for people I know when I was in school, there was a lot of people took Hanukkah off, and they don't celebrate Christmas the same way. So there's a lot of holidays on here that are specific to a particular religious group or whatever. And you know, that's fine, but I like the flexibility of potentially you know, convert some of those to floating holidays so people can take the holiday off that means the most to them. That makes sense to me.
Well, that's something personnel can talk about. Are we gonna vote on this? What is the motion?
Would you like to clarify as is as to which year we're, in the motion? As is proposed or as is, you know, previous year?
As,
you know,
I
just
believe, I'm sorry, as
2021.
it stands is what she originally
As it
said.
currently stands.
As it currently stands, that means without Indigenous Peoples' Day.
So it'd be
added, correct?
2021 schedule, or the
22 schedule,
22s.
22.
current year.
Yeah, and I would agree with that too. So
Yeah, that was, motion was made by trustee Green, supported by trustee Nyvel. Any other questions or comments? All right.
All right.
Are we ready for a vote?
Mm-hmm.
All right, all in favor?
aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Aye, or me too, so that's 5 to 2. Motion carries. Next up is the DPW garage heaters, and we will start that off with Manager Mattis.
It's really cold in the DPW garage. The heaters have been band-aided and held together for several years, but they are gone beyond repair at this point. When winter hit last week before summer, in the time since, the garage was without heat and it was extremely cold. So it is time to replace the heaters. It's kind of a need item. It's one we budgeted for some DPW garage repairs last year that we didn't need to do. They were less expensive than we thought, and we plan to put some in the CIP in the future. But this one, of course, falls perfectly in between when we have those as a budget line item. So that's why it's brought to you tonight. It is more than Bob or I can approve administratively, and so Bob would be working with the contractor to install them. It'll be completed before Halloween is the plan, before the bonfire. I recommend the council move to approve the invoice for the installation of 2 heaters in the DPW garage.
I make a motion to approve installation of 2 heaters in the DPW in the garage according to the quote presented in an amount not to exceed $9,380.
Support.
We have a motion on the table by trustee Hayden, and that is supported by trustee Green. Any comments or questions?
Brian, I have a question. Why is there only one proposal here?
I think if it's over 10, we have to have 3. I think. I can read the purchasing policy if you want. I have a copy of it. I can dig it out if you'd like. It's also very difficult to get people to come out to get quotes. We've gone on lots of fishing expeditions where we try to find 3 bidders, and then everybody's mad because they came out for nothing and they spent half a day getting here, giving us a quote, and then we don't use it. But this is a vendor that DPW Director Hawksbill is very familiar with. He's worked with them in the past. Reputable, licensed, insured, all the good stuff.
Now, these, the radiant heaters that are in there right now, those are being removed and being replaced pretty much the same type.
Same setup, essentially, yes.
Now, I'm not sure if everybody knows radiant heat, but when I was working in a factory with steel, that's the type of heat we used because it was something off the metal, and it helped to heat. Is that really something that would work in there?
It heats all mass, and it absolutely, absolutely fantastic. It'll heat the concrete.
Like I said, I'm only.
Reverber ray heaters are the way to go, because they heat mass. So anything that's in the space, if there's nothing in the space, the concrete, it'll heat the concrete. So you're not just heating air, you're heating mass. Then the mass gives off that.
Yeah. Okay, because like I said, when I was in a factory, we had steel, and
Sure.
That's what we were.
That really gives
So
off.
yeah, trust me. I didn't know about the concrete, so.
Gets the snow off the plows.
Yes. Reverber ray heaters are fantastic.
And how long will it take them from approval, for us to approve this until they have it done? Or,
Any other questions or comments?
oh,
All right, this will require a roll call vote, please.
Hayden,
Yes.
Nivelt,
Yes.
Randazzo,
yes.
Silas,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Green, Bryce.
Yes, thank you. That motion carries 7-0. We are on to the tree maintenance, and we will begin that with Manager Mattis.
Ryan, just a quick question. Do you add those to the CIP, like when these happen? Do you go in automatically and add it?
So that's one that Tyler will see, we'll see it on the audit as an asset that we bought new heaters in the future. And then as we're talking CIP next year, we'll say we already spent some this year, so let's bump that another year out.
Okay,
So
but
it'll
it
probably
will
come
be
off.
reflected in there in a line, okay, very
Yeah.
good, thank you.
Yep. It's one we shouldn't have to replace for a long time, so. Next up, tree maintenance. We have a couple problem trees that, we know they are potential problems and could cause some damage. They are beyond the scope for what our DPW crew can do with their equipment and, human resources. And so, we've been working to replace street trees in the downtown. There'll be a fun announcement coming from the DNR in the very near future. DDA got to discuss it already, but, we are working to replace street trees. Some of them have outgrown their space. They're getting too big for where they are. So we'll see some new trees downtown and along Mill Street and South Street in the near future. Tree work can be pretty expensive, as we all know. This item calls for an up to amount because we are not sure how much it's gonna cost. There's 3 to 5 trees that we know could be issues. They would be very expensive if they were to fall, and it could happen. And so Bob and I would like, because this is not an expense that we budgeted for this year, we would like to pursue some arborists to help us address the problems before they become bigger problems.
No, are you doing 3-bid? Are you looking for us just to say, hey, spend up to this? Or are we going to do, since it's over 10, several bids from?
It'll be, no one item will be the, $14,999 is my expectation. I think we will kind of look at each tree. Bob has a pretty decent idea of what some of them will cost, but it's a fluid number of what those things cost right now. And each one has different challenges between utilities and houses and things like that. So the idea is that we would not spend all $15,000, but to know that we can address these problems and be done with them without spending more than that.
Well, if this is just discussion at the moment, I do have
So we're just.
We're on
Go.
Make a
sequence.
motion then to authorize the village manager and DPW director to authorize spending up to $15,000 to address problem trees in the village.
Support.
All right,
Okay.
we have a motion on the table by trustee Green, and that is supported by trustee Dialis. Do we have any questions, comments?
Yes, I wasn't sure if this was a discussion item only, or whether we had to have a motion first, because I see no quotes attached or anything, I see no estimate, or I heard verbally 3 to 5 trees, that could be problematic. My concern here is that, we're talking about, we saw the audit results, we saw that we had some concerns about having a negative fund balance in the budget. We have an unexpected $10,000 expense on the DPW garage already. We had a lot of projects already going on, and here we're asked for another $15,000 on top of that, and I just have concerns that we keep spending money on stuff. Is there really no way that we can, address just the most significant ones for somewhat less of an amount and defer some of this cost into following your budget? Because I have serious concerns about what's happening with our budget and the amount of money we're spending on things. I don't want to see our community get to the point where we get to a point where suddenly all activity has to come to a screeching halt because we don't have any budget left. And, you know, when I see things keep adding on like this, is this really truly necessary? I'd like to see more of an analysis or some more estimates, more information behind this request before I'm willing to say yes or no to it, because I just don't have enough information on here to really know whether this is truly justified or not. Not that I don't trust Bob and Ryan, but you know, we got to do our due diligence and do our proper oversight of requests like this to make sure that this really is truly needed and that it's a good expenditure of our community's money. And that's what I'm going to say.
Any other questions?
Actually, a comment, you know, my issue is, I agree with what you say, but we've already had 2 trees fall. Luckily, they didn't fall on somebody, one did fall on somebody's property, their car. You know, if it's someone, then, you know, the price tag just went up enormously. And I'd hate to see that happen too.
Yeah, well, I had 2 mature trees removed from my property this year, which I got a good deal on because they said, hey, our crews are going to be in the area. And one of them was a tall pine tree, and they say the pine trees are actually more difficult because they have to go up there and trim every single branch individually. So they say those actually tend to be more costly than a regular type of a tree. So I don't know what that's why I'm wondering, how is it that it's going to be 15,000 when we're talking about 3 to 5 problem trees? That's why I need more information to understand where this amount comes from.
I have a question then. If DDA, I know they were applying for a grant, did they get a grant, and if so, is it to remove and replace trees? And are the trees we're looking at here different than the ones the DDA is going to be replacing?
So the DDA received a grant. It is a matching grant. It will not meet the full amount that is requested. We have also received donation from a community group towards trees as well. And they've been actively working on, I think they did, was it 2 years? They didn't donate yet this year, yeah. But I know they're going to from their, in the spring again. And so anyway, so it's been an active process.
The trees that we
Does it
applied
meet
for
that?
are the ones lining downtown.
Okay.
Which is what we're talking about. Correct.
Okay, so, and will whatever the amount yet to be, you know, revealed,
4,000.
4,000, yeah.
okay.
It's not a secret. I'm sorry, Melanie.
Okay.
I apologize.
So the 4,000 then is to remove,
No, it is
no,
to purchase.
it's to buy.
Purchase new
It's a
trees.
matching grant.
Purchase
to
only.
Purchase trees.
So then that 4,000, then DDA has to come up with the other 4, or the community group?
It's jointly village DDA.
Yeah.
So we haven't,
A lot of
okay.
it is the DPW
In-kind.
expense, in-kind.
Oh, it's in kind
That
service.
is part of
Donations from the
our
community.
contribution.
Okay,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
within kind.
It is a project that our DDA representative jumped in on as he was very passionate about it.
Right.
To assist Bob and Ryan in their, and Matt in their endeavors. And found this grant to apply for on behalf of the DDA and
Right,
village.
and that was the AARP.
Nope.
No, it was
Wasn't
the
it?
Michigan DNR.
Oh, that's a different one, okay. So it's 4,000, then plus 4,000, so then there'd be 8,000. And you guys are looking for 15.
Just to take
No,
off the
in-
8.
No, okay.
8 is to buy.
In-kind donations from the DPW labor, donations from the community, all of that can go towards our matching 4,000. We
Okay,
don't have to come up with 4,000 in cash to match the 4,000,
okay,
but it is a matching grant. You have to
right.
prove your other.
So we really have just 4,000.
But isn't that somewhat of a different topic than this request? Because this is to address removal of problem trees, not to
Right.
replace
And I was
and add
just-
new.
right.
DPW.
I can't speak to the trees in the request. I can only speak to the trees that we're looking at from the
Right,
DDA.
and I just wanted to make sure we weren't talking about the same trees, because we don't know what the
Don't know.
DDA's doing. So-
No, the
okay.
DDA is not doing, the DDA and village
And
together.
DPW.
Okay,
So some of the problem trees would be in the scope of the DDA
That's what I
and
thought.
DNR grant, but not all of them. The PAR plan also has their risk reduction grants. and we are going to apply to receive up to $5,000. I have spoken to our insurance agent a couple times about it, and he said trees were usually reactive instead of proactive. So we wait for a tree to fall down and then do a claim, and we clean up the mess rather than, here's money to address this before it becomes a problem. So it's not an insurance situation yet, but the Power Plan grant may be an appropriate source to mitigate some of this cost.
And that's just a grant, though, that we're not guaranteed, it's just a grant.
Correct, we'd have to
Yeah.
apply and
Yeah, so
wait.
it's important not to think that that would be money. Okay.
Hence the up to, and it may be more, it may be less, and so I think that's what Ryan is saying, is we're working on items, it needs to be addressed. 2017, this has been on our radar with Village Council on a constant basis, on and off, since 2017. And here we are at the point to where we are now doing insurance claims based on us not addressing this, so.
And if I just want to apologize really quick, because I can only speak to the grant that we received, that I know what that's for. I don't know the trees that you guys are discussing tonight, so I apologize if I caused any
Oh,
confusion.
no, all good, all good.
The last time we had a joint meeting with the planning commission, I remember speaking with, I forget the gentleman's name, who was looking at the tree issue in town.
Dave?
Rick. The
Oh.
planning commission would be Rick.
Planning commission
Not
would be
Reggie.
DDA.
No.
would be
GDA would be Dave.
Dave.
Wilson.
Wilson.
Dave, the
It was
DDA?
Dave.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And there was a lot of trees that have already outgrown the space and are starting to cause sidewalk damage, much less fall down potential. So trees need to be addressed in the village. They're not the right species and they're way overgrown. So we need to address the trees and we need to be proactive as opposed to reactive, because it's gonna end up causing more damage and costing more money to replace them if we just keep waiting longer and longer. We're already beyond where we needed to be to address the issue years ago, just for clarity.
Oh, I understand that. I've seen the trees and how they grow. I've often wondered, why did we choose to put certain types of trees under utility lines? Because knowing that they're gonna grow up in there. But that also raises another question I have, which is, since some of those are apparently interfering into the utility lines, is there any thing we can do to work with the utilities to help us with that? Because I know like DTE does tree trimming programs to protect their assets, and I don't know if the other utility companies might do anything to help protect their assets too in this case.
Insurance covering their assets, definitely. But they have assets all over the state, and I speak with them regularly. They have a community liaison about coming out. I've also talked about burying utilities. They are talking about mitigating risk. They have too many trees and too many lines, so it's not an urgent matter for them. Can they help with some? Maybe, but
I mean, during COVID, that's all they did was trim trees everywhere, over and over and over again. I'm
and
surprised.
then last summer we had power lines down all around the area.
Yeah.
So did it help?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Mine caught fire, so it's totally fine.
Okay.
It was bad.
Back to the motion.
Softball.
Any other questions or comments? Are we ready for vote? All right. This will require a roll call vote, please.
Nivell,
Yes.
Randazzo,
Yes.
Dialis,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
Hayden,
No.
Bryce.
Yes. That motion carries 6-1. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to the Village Council workshop, and we'll send it over to Manager Manis to start, please.
All right, we, as you know, our adult use marijuana establishments ordinance has some pretty strict timelines for us to follow in it. As I'm sure you've seen, I know we've emailed about it, but our application is posted to our website. The application window opened on the 19th, that was last week, and the 21-day application window extends through November 9th, 2022. Maybe I didn't spell all that out in my write-up here, sorry. Because of the strict timelines, our newly elected members of the Village Council will get to be sworn in at the November 28th meeting, and then shortly thereafter be able to vote on our conditional licenses for marijuana establishments. So in order to kind of do our homework, to talk through those things ahead of time, I'm looking to schedule a village council workshop for November 14th, 2022. The November 14th date causes a few issues that we need to be aware of. The election on November 8th is likely not going to be certified by the 14th. So it's a little bit ambiguous of who's a current member and who's a yet to be sworn in member of the village council. That's why the workshop format is helpful. We can't vote in a workshop. It's for discussion purposes only. The General Law Village Act states that new members' terms begin on November 20th, and that's also the day that former members are relieved of their duties. So with a workshop on the 14th, we would intentionally invite both current village council members and incoming members that have yet to be sworn in. So it would be strictly informational, no votes would take place, and we would discuss the applications that we receive for adult use marijuana establishments. So I spoke to our attorney about what that looks like. He agrees with our process to have a workshop to discuss those things. We're gonna further discuss what can be disclosed in a public meeting and what we have to redact and things like that, but we will make sure that you have the clearest picture possible ahead of being asked to vote on that shortly after being sworn in. So I'd
Make a
recommend
motion to
thanks.
schedule a village council workshop for November 14th, 2022 at 7 PM in the Old Town Hall.
Support.
We have a motion on the table by trustee Nyla, that's supported by trustee Rendazzo. Any questions or comments? All right, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, that motion carries 7-0. Next up is the personnel policies for review, and we will start with the remote policy and then the social media. Send it over to start. Who? Which one?
So these two, I'll start and you fill in. The remote work and social media policy are two that have been discussed by the Personnel Committee for inclusion in the personnel policy document. These two are here for your review. Any questions, concerns, comments can be directed to the Personnel Committee. They've been reviewed by our attorney and look into. The plan is to adopt all of the policies at once, so we don't need to vote on each one individually at this time, but looking for any input on these. It can be immediate or in the next week. Please let us know your comments. Anything you want to add?
No, just that we need to know what they, if they agree with them, have any questions. And then, I don't know, we were talking about when we could vote on the final everything, but I'm not sure when that is. We've been working diligently to get all of these policies into place, update them, current terminology, et cetera. And, while we've got a lot done, there's still a few that are straggling, that are the more complex ones. These were a couple of the complex ones, and the attorney helped us, condense it into this and make it work, so. But if you do have any questions, just let Larry or Melanie or I can.
And I should revise what I said to contact one of your favorite members of the Personnel Committee. If you were to email all three, it'd be a quorum, and that would be bad. So don't do that. Either Kay is point person, or me, or both, or any input is appreciated.
Thank you. Do you have a certain deadline that you would like to hear from us?
Next Monday,
Yeah, please.
Which is the date is?
Halloween,
Halloween.
10/31.
October 31st.
Before 6 o'clock. We'll all be busy after that.
All right. Thank you. Next up, item H is grants, and we will start that off with, Molly? Can you start that?
Okay, so just a couple quick things, just because dates, I wanted to bring this to the council's attention, and it's something that I want to speak with Brian and our incoming president about. First, though, the Bridge Builder Grant, I know it was in the paper, and unfortunately, the article, the way it was written makes it sound like that was something that the village applied for and received. It was not. It was an individual grant, that I applied for. And I do all the tax work and everything on it, and it goes into my account, and then I present it to the village. So I have a webinar on that tomorrow. I'll get more information, and I will let everybody know then what's next, because I don't know either, and I'm just doing what they tell me to do. So I just wanted to make that very clear. It wasn't a village grant, and it's important that it's recognized as not one, because that's not how it was applied for, and I have to adhere to the guidelines. I don't want to lose it. There's 4 grants in particular coming up. I know one I gave to Ryan in May. It's a community foundation. Deadline is 11/15. We can talk more about it, Ryan, but I didn't know, have we done anything with that? We talked about it in May. We had called and confirmed that we were eligible for it. And it's called the Community Foundation. I do not know if it's not the one that you missed the date on. It's just the one that you and I called the guy and asked the contact. I'll bring it in tomorrow. But anyways, that deadline is coming up on 11/15. Then we have the Spark grants that have opened up. You guys are probably getting emails all the time on those right now. Those close on the 19th. There is a webinar on the 28th. I would really like, as a council, that we applied for this. The Spark grant, I think that we could apply for the garden. It's for recreation, and there's other, but I'm just throwing it out there to this council, because we need to start finding ways to, we need to start applying. I have a ton of grants that are sitting in this binder that I've been waiting to apply since I've been on council, so it's like, it's time to go. We have public spaces, community places, it's MEDC, it's a crowdfunding patronicity match program. That's something that I think the DDA could really help us out with. Our RC is an important part of that. So I don't know, but I'm, again, saying as a council, I think that's something we should look at and talk to DDA about that. And then we have the T-Mobile Hometown Grant. It opened the 22nd, closes December 22nd. I do not know. Is DDA applying for that or no?
I think that only DDAs can apply for that.
No, not that one. What? Not the T-Mobile one.
Oh,
Okay, I just want to make, because that is something that I am going to say we need to apply for. So I will bring everything into Ryan tomorrow, but I'm just making council aware, and I want to talk to Ryan and the incoming president, Ken Quisenberry, who's here this evening, about a process and how we go about doing this. But these all have windows that open and are going to be cut off, so, because we don't meet for another month. I just wanted to bring that up, that we need to do this. Time is of the essence. And then, in the meantime, we can get a process down of how we are gonna go about doing these. And that is it.
Yeah, I can add on that I know the Spark grants were discussed at the SEMCOG General Assembly meeting, and Ryan and I both said that's something that we definitely want to pursue and look into, and I know SEMCOG does have resources to help communities with applying for grants and finding grant opportunities. So I know Ryan's going to look into all the resources he can towards finding and applying for these grants.
Anyone else? Questions, comments? Is that everything, Melanie?
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Did you say? Oh, I did.
No, thank you.
All right. Next up is the the villagers managers report.
Villagers.
Say that
Good
10 times
restaurant.
fast, and we will start that off with Ryan.
All right, I'm gonna go fast. I attended the ICMA conference in Columbus, Ohio in September. There was no expense to the village. We got a scholarship. My scholarship application is included in your packet. Any questions on those two items? Cool. Veterans resources. There's several veterans fairs coming up. We like to include those in your packets. Share the flyer with a friend. Any questions on those? All right. We got a memo from our attorney regarding the use of drones and exclusion of evidence. That's enclosed in your packet. Any questions? Let me know, and I would be happy to refer them to our attorney if needed. It comes down to zoning and code enforcement and the use of drones, which is always
Actually,
the
that
frontier.
did spark a thought on my side, if I could just
Okay, please.
mention it real quick, is I noticed that in some of the presentation material included with that, it talked about drones being separate from plane over flyovers. And it made me think about like Google Earth and all the satellite imagery we have. There's a lot of things can be seen with that satellite imagery too that, and I was wondering how those types of things, you know, the satellite imagery or flyover imagery can be utilized for code enforcement, because that would be an interesting to know.
Maxon touches on it some, and I'm fuzzy on the details. I can dive in if
Yeah.
time permits.
Yeah, I
It's
don't,
into the
I'm not
purview of
asking you to
question.
dive in, I'm just saying it should be, this is an area I think it would be interesting to find out a little more about, because we do have some things that I'm sure would help us with ordinance enforcement. And I know from looking at some of the satellite views of our imagery that you can see certain properties that it's pretty clear there's probably something going on that we can't easily see, obviously, but in the satellite imagery you see stuff and it makes you wonder whether there's anything that should be enforced in some cases, and I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Okay, the other part there is the annual court case and legislative summary from MSU Extension. Lots of helpful ones as ZBA members that can come in handy in the future. Questions? All right, you've got the Halloween flyer about trick or treating, and then cider and donuts at the DPW garage. Yes, cider and donuts at the DPW garage, right after trick or treating. Volunteers appreciated. The more the merrier. They're pouring cider and handing out donut holes.
How are
from
you
BDs.
distributing candy this year?
The office is collecting candy. We've received a ton of donations already. We have the list of people who've called and said, please give me candy. Last year we received enough candy that we made sure everybody along kind of the main trick-or-treating routes got at least some candy. The people who called got a little more or got the bigger bags. I'm not sure where we're at yet. We will, I'll put it on my list, but this week we'll look at what that looks like, how much we have and stuff like that. We will disperse that late this week.
Okay, and will that, and then the reason I'm asking, I know I showed up and it was DDA, you, me, your baby. But, I mean, and we went around and distributed it, so this is our last meeting before that takes place, so if you need anybody here to help distribute it, I know I cannot this year, but now's the time to ask us so people can plan to help you.
I don't know if we
Okay.
need help, so stay tuned. I will let you know if I do need it.
Something out, yeah.
Yep. Okay,
Yes.
and then a save the date about the DDA accreditation. We're used to it in early January, right? And they changed the date on us a little bit. The process has also changed a little bit, so that's there in your packet. Tanya, want to say more about it?
There is going to be, we all know Matt is very thorough, so he's already ready to start making these fabulous changes. There is going to be an informational meeting scheduled, and so we're going to be on top of it and know what these changes are. As usual, changes are good and bad, and so we appreciate the support, the day on your calendar, and showing up to remind everybody how fabulous DPW is. I mean DDA. DDA.
And Pat,
Yes,
But not on this day. DDA is great on this day.
they're
Sorry
helpful on
about
this
that.
day.
I love it.
And Pat, don't worry, there will be snacks.
There you go.
Very
There you
important,
go.
very important.
On a similar note,
5
just a
bowls.
quick reminder that Shop Small Saturday is on November 26th. So right after Black Friday, Shop Small on Saturday. More to come. Matt will send you more info, but that's all I got.
So now, that's good.
Excellent.
Terrific
Next up
letter
is
of
the public comment. This is
application
on
to
non-agenda items only at this time.
Seminar.
If you have something that is a non-agenda item that you'd love to share, ask, tell us about, please do. Stand up, wave your hand, whatever you choose. Please.
Oh, my God.
I happen to be appointed court officer at 4 courts in Oakland County. This goes to a topic you all discussed a little earlier. Of the 4 courts, this past October the 10th, coincidentally, was the holiday that you guys discussed earlier. Of the 4 Oakland County courts, which received state funding and local funding, 2 were open, 2 were closed. The 2 that were closed had signs posted in their windows saying, "We are closed in observance of Columbus Day."
Oh, boy.
So, those were the Oakland County governmental courts. I happened to do some banking that day too, and I banked at several banks. Guess what? 2 were open, 2 were closed. Chase was open, PNC was open, Oxford was closed,
Yeah,
and
Chase
Bank of
was.
America was closed. It seems to be a rather fluid thing at the moment, just based on my observances. And further, that those all affect public employees, but of course, we all know the vast majority of people are private individuals who work for companies or own their own companies and don't have any of those luxuries
Right.
whatsoever. So, not sure what that answers, but you'll probably see it on an agenda coming up soon.
Thanks, Ken. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I had a few.
Okay, you're at 2.5 minutes. What can you get done?
Oh, I do have one other comment.
Please.
And this is more tongue in cheek. The tree that falls down that costs the village the money isn't gonna end up being one of the ones that's on our hit list. It's gonna be the one you don't expect.
Probably.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, we're at additional items from the trustees, and we're gonna start with Tony. Is there anything that you wanted to add?
Yeah, a couple things. Okay, they and myself at the Edna Burton Center. If anybody knows, anybody that is homebound that they are worried about, if you can contact, Faye or myself, and we can get some information from you so that information can be passed on to CERT. That information be passed on to CERT if the fire department, Chief Quapis activated us to go out and check on homebound individuals. This is something that we do every year, especially in the winter time, but again, we get activated through the fire department. But it's best to, like I said, go to the center, contact Faye, I should say, or you can send me an email and I can pass that information on to. The other thing is, I don't know if everybody got this, but Faye put out a letter about the annual Thanksgiving dinner that will be November 12th. It'll start at 4. It'll be at the senior center. Me being staff and other volunteers will be serving, and turkey, mashed potatoes, gravy, and all that stuff. So again, if we'd like you to be there, just contact Faye or myself, and then if you contact me, I can get it over to her as well. And I believe that's all I got.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you. All right, Melanie, please.
Witches Night Out, fabulous. I went again and just fabulous job, DDA, Tony and her hubby. And I have the second year in a row I helped take down everything on Sunday. And we really have a good time doing that. And I say we, because me and my husband. And he looks forward to that so he can hang with Tony's husband. And they take the tents down and the bigger items that we can't lift. So But just a great event again. And just the other thing, the CDBG is coming up. I just was going to ask that we get information on it earlier this year is all. But I'll get with Jenna to see if she has gotten any info. That's it.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you. We are to Larry, please.
Yes, and just to add on, I do agree, Witches Night Out was a really good event. I saw a lot of people up there having a lot of fun. And I was up there volunteering as a CERT member to help with directing traffic and situations and stuff, and I thought it was really good. Unfortunately, there was a little bit of a unfortunate side note on there, is that we did tend to notice that there were a number of people that, although they weren't supposed to, were wandering around with alcoholic beverages outside of the designated areas. So, you know, I know you can't stop everybody, but we might have to just try to think about how do we try to curb that, because, you know, we don't want to see that sort of stuff going on, and it's best if people can just keep that in where it's supposed to be and not take it out of those areas. But otherwise, it was a really fun event, and great to see a lot of people in the downtown area. Another thing is as you saw, I was a little bit concerned about some of these expenses that we are coming up that are not budgeted, where we keep being asked to spend money on things like that. And, you know, I know this is expected. We're going to have these things. But having seen the auditor's report tonight, where there was some concerns about how the budget was approved with a apparently negative unassigned balance at some point, which I'm sure it'll be addressed. But also hiring a new person at higher DPW wage, and we're also talking about potentially looking at wage increases for others and these other expenses that we've been asked. I think it would be prudent of us, with the new council, sometime in January to call for a workshop just to review current budget and start planning and thinking about the next year's budget too. Because I think that would be best if we all come together and review that stuff early and have plenty of time to, you know, work out all of these situations and stuff before we get to the bottom, the final deadline. So I would like to ask and request that we consider doing a workshop in January on the budget. And I think that's it.
We're into Kate, please.
I just was gonna mention again, about Halloween, I will be there also at the DPW, with the cider donuts right in the festival. And it went easily last year, and all the years I've done it, so I don't anticipate any big issues. Hopefully, it's not raining, like it's kind of talking about right now.
I don't even want to look.
We'll be able to have the bonfire.
Hopefully the lights won't go out. That was great.
That's all.
Thanks,
Thank
Kate.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, regarding Halloween, maybe it's just this year that I'm looking closer, but there's a lot of houses that look really good from a decoration standpoint on Church Street and other streets that I've seen. So that's exciting. And that's pretty much it. So we got some enthusiasm for it. Hopefully we get some good weather. All right, that's it.
Please.
So, in my role in my professional life, I'm not a project manager per se, but I manage the electrical side automation projects. That's what I do for a living, kind of, in a nutshell. And so I'm managing multi-million-dollar projects, and I have a saying, I'm gonna get it printed on a t-shirt one day, that time is like gravity, it's a constant. That if you don't get your tasks done when you're supposed to get them done, the next task will not get done when it's supposed to get done, and so on and so forth, a snowball like that. So you have to put a plan together, how you're gonna accomplish these tasks, and then achieve those tasks on time to be able to get the project done on time. So I say all that to say that it saddens me that here we are, I think it's been about 6 years now that I've been on and off council, and I've been trying to get a capital improvement plan put together focusing on streets and the, how the streets are degrading and how we're going to maintain the streets, much less, there's been a lot of call for sidewalks in areas that don't have sidewalks in the village. So here we are 6 years later, and we have yet to have a plan on how we're gonna maintain the streets that we have that are falling apart, much less add to the streets, sidewalks and whatnot that we want to improve. So, I don't know, I just think it's a fairly straightforward exercise that you evaluate what you have and figure out what it's gonna cost to repair it, add 10% per year for each project, and figure out how you're gonna pay for it, have some plans for grants or other means of funding, but nonetheless, put a plan together on how you're going to address the issues that we have at hand, because the issues aren't going away. So here we are 6 years later and still no plan. So just a comment more than anything, just sad about that. But I did not re-up for election this year. I have a lot of stuff going on in my personal and professional life that I've missed a few meetings and I've struggled to allocate time for council. It's been a pleasure to serve our village. I really enjoy our village. I've been in here for about 8 years, going on 9 or 10 now, I think. So I really enjoy the village and glad I could serve.
Thank you. We appreciate your service.
Appreciate it. Ryan, anything else you would wrap up?
No, I just wanted to thank you guys. This is our last meeting as this village council. So we'll, we've had some fun. So yeah, sad to see some people go. I know there's gonna be some changes, but looking forward to adventures ahead. But it's, thanks for lots of fun in the last 18-ish months in this role.
It's been our pleasure, Ryan.
Thank you.
One additional comment, if I may.
Please.
Ryan, you've been a great addition to the village, and I thank you very much for coming on board and staying on board, and hopefully you'll have a long career here. I just really appreciate your effort and service to the village.
Thank you.
All right, couple things I had to address Larry's question. Just keep in mind what an establishment does that serves alcohol is between them and the police. That has nothing to do with the event. Whether people choose to bring alcohol downtown on their own has nothing to do with the event. That is between them and the police. So our area was monitored. Our area was following all of the guidelines set in place by the license that was given to us. One way to think about handling this, which we do have this conversation quite often and loop through, is a social district. So keep that in mind in your head. Lots of communities that have them don't have this yearly argument. So, and I don't mean your argument, I mean alcohol argument.
Right.
So just keep that in mind. That's something that, you know, we've kind of discussed back and forth, and that would take, you know, work with the DDA, and that would take work with the village. And so in the back of your head, figure out if that's something you're interested in or not. Again, not saying it would solve the problem at all, I'll just say that is one solution to that issue. And just on a personal note, I have absolutely enjoyed the time with the village, enjoyed the time with council, enjoyed the time with our staff, and I will surely miss it, so thank you. Last thing that I have is a comment on the Indigenous Peoples' Day. I personally am very disappointed in our council. We're disrespecting our ancestors, and we're denying acknowledging their sacrifices and what they've done for us. And I just want to make that as my personal comment. Thank you.
Thanks, Margaret.
We have completed everything. We're looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Support.
We have a motion on the table by Trustee Green, and that is supported by Trustee Hayden. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, a vote please.
No.
I'm sorry. I'm writing at the same time. All right. Hold on a second. I'm writing the time at the same time. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries 7-0. It is 8:54.
Oh, well, stressed.